Hi there.
Hey, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Oh, super duper. Is the background noise terrible?
No, it's fine.
Oh, okay, because I have a fan going in the corner and it's loud.
I'm
So
sure
we're
it's
both early.
necessary though.
I just figured I would jump on since I was here. I was answering emails, so I figured I'd jump on just in case you were maybe earlier.
Yeah, I got a notification that you were in the waiting room, so I figured I would hop on. And since I know you have something after this.
Yeah, yeah. It's always something before and after, it seems lately.
Yeah,
It's ridiculous.
definitely.
It's crazy. So
Excellent.
do you want to get started?
Yeah, that'd be great. Thanks so much for joining us here. As you know, since we can't do in-person visits this year, we're doing virtual visits instead for the Slow Wine Guide
Yeah.
2021. So I would love to start off by having you tell us the story of Forge Cellars and some of the roles of the key people involved.
Sure. So Forge Cellars was started in 2011. It's a partnership between myself and Louis Barrault, who is a friend, been a longtime friend for, nearly 20 years. He's a winemaker in Gigondas, France. And we started Forge because we both felt there was huge potential. This is where I live, and we were discussing over lunch one day in Gigondas back in 2010 the potential of the Finger Lakes, and I said, I'm from this very interesting area, and he's like, tell me about it. And one thing led to another, and he said, I want to come visit, and I said, anytime, Louis. And 3 months later, the phone rang, and he said, hey, I'm in the States. Can I come see these lakes? And absolutely. And that was kind of the beginning. He came up here and was enamored with the idea that it's cool climate terroir, that he always wanted to work in cool climate. He, oops, hold on. I was going to shut this off, and let's see. And he never has done a project outside of France, but he was very interested in cool climate. And the potential here was kind of limitless. And additionally, there's really no rules. We could kind of blaze our own path. And I think that was really intoxicating for a vigneron whose family's been making wine for 500 years in France. This ability to chart our own path and start from zero was very intriguing. So we started very small. In 2011, we made 350 cases and we bottled it by hand and the whole thing. And then in 2012, we made a bit more, and we kind of looked at each other and said, okay, we can do this. There's huge potential for us. And should we keep going? And that was like the big turning point. So we made a bit more wine in 2013 and 2012, and then we really became even more interested in what we could do here. And eventually in 2015-16, we bought our current property, which is we named Bellows because it blows here all the time. The wind here is just insanity. So my aunt, when we were talking about what to name it, she's like, "Oh gosh, your place is like, living at the end of a bellow, where you pump, to start a fire." And people don't use them anymore, but immediately we were like, "Oh my God, a bellows!" Because we have the thermals that come up the hill all day, and so it's always windy. And during the winter, it's ridiculous. It's like the Mistral, in France. And so we bought bellows in 15 and 16, started clearing it and started building our winery that summer. And so now we have a fairly small winery here as well. We just built a little warehouse, and I'm actually sitting in our little summer house where we sit and do our sit down private tastings. And it's a place I like to just hang out and work because it's very bright and very kind of soft texture. So I sneak up here often to work during the daytime and the evening. We focus just on dry Riesling and Pinot and new a bit of Cab Franc this year.
Very cool.
Yeah, I'm quite happy. Louis been pushing me to do it for a long time, and I drug my feet. I said, when the opportunity presents itself kind of organically, I will do it. And until then, I'm not going to go out of my way too much to try to make Cab Franc. And I have a grower who's a dear friend and a great grower. Um, had this Cab Franc vineyard he planted a few years back on sand that happens to be kind of contiguous with another vineyard I really like. And he came to me this year and he said, I have this little vineyard that just started its fourth or fifth leaf right next to this other vineyard that I know quite well. And I said, well, I guess this is the year. So we bought a bit and made around 130 cases. So quite small production. We make it very similar to our Pinot, but it's beautiful. It's really pretty, and the aromatics are gorgeous. So we're going to keep going and make a bit more. So those are the three varietals and we focused on two of them since the beginning. I think we're kind of unique in some respects because we're truly dry. We're really keen on always less than 4 grams, but typically we're around 2 grams of RS. So we always ferment to bone dryness, as we say. So the Forge profile tends to be quite round, lots of richness, but all in the absence of sugar. For us, the style we prefer is, I guess you could say our Riesling's kind of our Burgundian, even though it's Riesling, but we like this texture and this roundness, but we like the dryness and the purity that brings. And we're able to accomplish that here because we can harvest quite late. And we don't achieve a lot of alcohol, which is the beauty of Riesling. We stay fresh, but we'll come in around 12 degrees, 12 and a half degrees alcohol. So that's kind of the Forge beginning and what we do and what we've been doing. Currently, I work in probably something like 16 or 18 different Riesling sites, all within this 8-mile stretch. And so I guess we're like the little Cistercians, we're out trying to identify these little parcels and tell their story. And it's intoxicating because every year we find new stories. And, my neighbor right down below here from our place had a little 2.5 acre parcel that was being farmed classic, lots of nitrogen and lots of big growth and I knew the guy, and it took me quite a while to convince him to work with us because, I had to reduce his yields, and everything was different than the way he'd always worked. In the first year, I think he was in shock because he went out and the leaves were gone and the yields were down, but we were spraying these biological treatments, and he could walk in his vineyard right after the spray, and he was like, wow, this is kind of cool. And now this is our last year was our second year. And, he was up the other day tasting, and he just said, I can't believe the difference of the flavors that I see. And that's amazing to hear because there's so many stories here that can be told. And the audience is obviously, wine drinkers that are interested in this. And it's magical to be in this place that is so undiscovered. And so we keep accumulating sites, and we're very fortunate because we make the wines in very small lots because we use barrel. We use 228s, 225s, 400, 500, 600 liter barrels. We have some stainless steel, but they're all old barrels, mostly coming from our estate in France. But this gives us this ability to separate everything. So we have everything separated. And that's just, it's amazing because we're seeing these differences amongst these vineyards and these profiles, whether they're closer to the lake or higher degree of shale, or maybe more sand or greater loamy soils, or more clay or more gravel. And so it's just it's I can bore you with details for hours and hours. It's just so crazy, you know, that we're discovering this region that's been making wine, mind you, since the 1860s. And really, I feel like we're in a great position to tell these stories and really engage people in a different way.
Fantastic. Yeah, I know that you were, we've spoken a little bit about the vineyards that you work with and your home farm, but would you mind telling me a little bit more about, the process of finding some of these vineyards to work with and like where most of these vineyards are situated? I know you focus on, I believe, Seneca Lake.
Yeah. For the most part, there's up from like essentially where we are, just due north, about 8 miles with the way the crow flies. There's a one section, and locally it's called the Banana Belt. Hokey, I know, but this is the warm area, and this is where we really put all of our 98% of our attention. I have one vineyard on the west side of Cayuga Lake, and which I love working with. He's maniacal and he's a great farmer, and we have a very good relationship since 2011. But all the rest of the work we do is here, and there's no formal site selection other than, it's a very small community. We all know each other. We all end up having a beer together at one point or the other, and so I guess my addiction is collecting these vineyards, and I've been fortunate to find quite a few old sites. I mean, I'm recently been taking over a big block of vines that were planted in 1972 by Charles Fournier, who was the winemaker, the general manager of Urbana Winery in Hammondsport. He came over from Clicquot back in the day. So, I mean, this very historical site that was being machine farmed just the old way. And we've been able to go in there and work with the owner and improve the soil health and improve the way it's worked and do hand picking. And I mean, and this kind of fell in my lap. I mean, I don't know if you know, I'm kind of passionate about it. And so I'm always on the lookout, and I'm always like, the hawk flying around looking for these new sites. And I can't help but get excited because I think there's even more out there that we know about. So there's no formal process. It's just being out and about, and maybe drinking a lot of beers with the fellas and finding out about this side or that side. And now people kind of know Forge and what we do. And I have guys come to me now. I get emails and say, "Hey, man, I got this little site. Would you be interested? Or I'm thinking about planting. What do you think?" So we hit a tipping point, and so now it's a little easier than it used to be.
Very cool. And when it comes to working with some of these growers, what's that process like? Do you come in and start using some of your philosophies to manage the vineyards, or do you work with them? Like, what's that process with each site?
Good question. And at the beginning, here was this dum-dum rolling up telling everybody, what he wanted to do with his Riesling. And I came across a picture today, a few pictures of us sorting Riesling by hand on this like metal table. I mean, really hokey. And we're all standing around doing it. So we had these hand-picked Rieslings, and we're resorting them. And I in the background were these this father and son, a very old family, and they're drinking a beer and laughing. And I always thought, oh, that's cute. Like, they came by to hang out. But now, like, I started thinking, and these guys used to stop by all the time when we were working in the beginning. And they would kind of hang around, have a beer, and chit-chat with themselves, and then they would leave. And I thought, oh, that's so nice. They're really supportive. Looking back, they thought we were out of our stinking mind. Because why would you handpick and then resort again? It was nuts. So my point is, at the beginning, you just have this idea in your head, and you're blind to kind of everything else because you're just so driven to do it this certain way. They humored me a lot of the times, and sometimes they would laugh at me, and I would end up doing the work myself. I would say, well, I think we need to do this or that, and they'd say, have at it, you go do it. So I would spend my free time, pulling leaves or cluster thinning. Um, and that went on at the beginning. But now I think we have a great relationship because we've learned things together. We've learned things that work, haven't worked. I've myself failed miserably in certain respects, which I think is good. It gives me bonus points, and we've had really great successes. So, some guys I've been working with for a while, and they know how the things I like to do, the things that are important to me, and I'm bringing new ideas with different foliar sprays or ways to manage the health, the soil health. And some of them kind of politely giggle at me, but more and more, everybody's concerned about soil health and runoff and chemical inputs. And this is a fairly underserved area. We don't have a lot of money. So we can't flip the switch overnight and everybody's organic. It just, there's not enough. We can't charge what we would need to charge in order to do that. So there's this slow progression and baby steps of reducing inputs. And what I'm trying to do is create a model on my own farm that I can replicate and scale up that is using biologicals or organics, but that is doable. And when you're in areas like, say, Burgundy, where you have your X cellar pricing is at that level where you can have very low yields, you can have very high levels of input, it's okay. But when you're in a region where we are and the price points that we're commanding, we really have to do the homework and develop a system of agriculture that is gentle, that is forward thinking, but that's actually sustainable from a business standpoint. And so that's really what I guess a lot of what I do now is focused on, is trying to maybe come up with a model that everybody can live by. Yeah.
Fantastic.
Does that help?
Yeah, definitely.
No
wrong answers.
I'm giving you way more than you ever bargained for.
No, please. I'm a geek about all these things too.
Oh,
so
okay.
It's very interesting to me.
All right.
Yeah, I know it's very different, obviously, and we were talking about this when we were adding New York to the guide this year. It's very different farming in the Finger Lakes than it is in like sunny Sonoma or Napa, right? Are you planning to pursue any sort of organic or biodynamic certification, or is that just not feasible here?
So
or necessary?
My partner's biodynamic organic has been for 50 years, right? In Gigondas. Very, very familiar with biodynamic. He uses some of it, others he doesn't use. He's not interested in being certified because he has his own opinions about every place is different. And, how can you have this one method of farming that's applicable to many different situations? And I'm with that. For certification, if something comes along, there's a working group here, a biointensive group that is talking about getting certification. Until that happens, you know what? For my own farm and what I do, I'll just be uber transparent. I like sharing what we're doing. I like to share ideas, and what I do on my own farm is 98% organic. But it's biointensive, meaning we're using lots of biological controls. So Japanese knotweed to spray for as a fungicide, or we're using our homemade compost for soil amendment, or we're using foliar treatments to adjust the health of the plant, and we're using sap analysis to judge the health of the plant. So with our type of farming, the idea is to have a healthy soil, so you have a healthy population of all the things that you need for the soil economy to function. by giving good soil inputs so that the plant can defend itself against disease. And it's a very from the root up methodology, but I think it's regenerative agriculture, right? I think it's the future. So it's just like our bodies. If we take care of our bodies and we put stuff in there, inside our bodies, we're much more resilient to disease. And that's really what this biointensive and regenerative agriculture is all about. So it's using some good science. It's using some principles of soil health, say from biodynamics, and it's using certified organic spray materials when necessary. So I don't think there's just one model, and I'm happy to create my own model and be open about it. And maybe in 5 or 6 or 8 years, we can have a really very holistic model that is maybe somebody wants to certify it. I don't know. Maybe I'll have my own certification. We'll see.
Great.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a more holistic approach to everything.
Try to, but you just there's many things to consider, right? There's tractor input. How many times are you putting a tractor down the road? So there's a lot more to this than saying, oh, I'm this, or oh, I'm this. It's evolution. So you can say, okay, I'm using this thing as a model, but I want to do more. For me, I want to keep my tractor out of my stinking vineyard. Like that's what I would love to do. Like how do I not mow so much? How do I my favorite thing, not hedge by doing passilage with the vines so that they stop slow growing. I mean, all these things, and I'm very interested in like what is the carbon input in a vineyard. So how much diesel fuel is being used? How much? All these things are part of the big equation. Mm-hmm. So I told you more than you ever needed to know.
So you were talking a little bit before about your preferred wine style for your Rieslings, but mm-hmm. would you mind speaking a little bit to your winemaking style as a whole and whether that's changed at all over the years?
Sure. Well, Louis, if you know Louis' wines from mm-hmm. Chateau Saint Côme, they were always this amazing blend of intensity but relief, and they just weren't power for power's sake. They have this richness in this real sense of place. It's the Rhone, in the northern Rhone, southern Rhone, so that they could have bigness, so to speak, but they always had freshness and relief. And I always thought, damn, that is so amazing that here's a guy that can make wine in a warm climate and achieve this freshness and this purity. And it's really what we try to do here. I mean, I have a tendency to pick very late so that we have physiological ripeness, because Riesling has this interesting arc that you can start with the green citrus components and then slide into maybe, pith of orange. And then if you keep holding tight, you can move into apricot and mango. And it's lovely because the physiological curve is not the alcohol curve, because the alcohol curve begins to level out and it keeps its acid so we can continue to ripen. So I think we like physiologically ripe Riesling, but no sugar. So we want intensity of flavors, but we want freshness and relief. So yes, it's Riesling. Yes, he works with Grenache and Syrah, but the idea is very much the same. We always want to give a wine that's frankly pleasurable and that you can have at the table. That's the most important thing for us. And it should make you happy, and it should make you want to drink a whole bunch of it. Mm-hmm. And so I think that's our approach, is always to showcase the place, let the place talk and get out of the way, and not let our egos get too involved, and do everything in the cellar, everything to do absolutely as little as possible. So we are always wanting to be ahead of the wine, never behind, meaning anticipating where is the wine going, what does the wine need, what do we need to do so we do nothing. We never want to respond. We never want to be told what to do. by the wine. We want to anticipate its needs. So like Louis says, it's a bit like driving down the highway at 100 miles an hour. You don't want to be looking in the rear view mirror. You want to be looking out in front. And so this is how we work in the cellar. We're constantly watching the wine. We're constantly testing the wines to see how the fermentations are going. And we want to address anything way, way early, because then we limit our SO2 additions. We limit, a lot of things that way. So that's a very kind of not specific answer to your question. It's more of a theoretical perspective, but I think the technical aspects they're kind of boring. But I think it's like, what do you feel when you go into the cellar? We still work with our hands. We still sweat. We still, are engaged. I mean, we sort the Riesling on a sorting table. We're still moving the hoses. We're not mechanized. And Louis says, winemaking should still, each day, you should wake up and feel it and be engaged. You shouldn't be sitting back pushing buttons. And personally, I can tell you, I feel it every day during harvest. So we want to be engaged with the wines.
Great. And is it similar for the Pinot Noir too? I mean, not just the philosophy, but what you're trying to achieve with the wine?
Yeah, it's the philosophy is exactly the same. Of course, the way we work is a little bit different. We go very fast with Pinot because we're afraid of oxidation. So we want to get the grapes out of the vineyard very quickly into the winery. We want to get them sorted very quickly. We use some whole cluster depending on the vintage. I judge the cluster health, and depending on how good it is, maybe I use 30%, 40%, 50%. Of course, Louis is often here for Pinot or Riesling, either one, and we'll make that decision often together. So we'll use some whole clusters. We do very, very, very gentle punch down. We don't pump over. We want to minimize harsh extraction. We're in a cold climate. We need to go gently, and that's really, and how we make the Cab Francs the same way. Typically, the reds, ideally they're unfined, unfiltered. But if they're not in a place that I feel comfortable, fine. A slight filtration is far better than having to explain a lot of cloudy wine to people, even though the flavor is fine. But people say, so, if we do everything right, then unless the vintage dictates it, we try not to filter or fine the reds. And with sulfurs, even, if we do things right, then we can keep the sulfurs, in the Rieslings in that 60 to 70 total sulfur range, which is quite low. So some vintages are a little more difficult than others, but it's cold climate winemaking. So you have to be flexible.
For sure.
Yeah.
And finally, I would be remiss if I didn't address everything that has been happening over the past few months. How have you guys as a business been dealing with everything amidst the impact of COVID, the shutdowns? Have there been any changes to your business?
Oh my God, it's been insanity. We were having this just perfect year, right? We had a very difficult vintage in 2018, but we leaned into it as a team, and it was like, I get teary-eyed even thinking about it because it was so hard. And the wines were, what we achieved was just like beyond expectation as a team. And I was so proud, and Louis was so proud, and the reviews were fantastic. And people really, really were happy with the wines. And it was just a major accomplishment for us. And it was the first vintage that we rolled out the 10, 12 single vineyard wines. Like we really put it out there. And people liked them a whole bunch. So everything was going perfect. All the wines were selling. I had a lot of great business in restaurants and really nice restaurants that, you're so happy to have, and Michelin restaurants that are well known, that are doing good things. And we were perfectly set up to come into harvest with all the wine sold or come into bottling and start bottling. It was all perfect. And I sat and looked at my right hand, Christina, in the office. I said, gosh, we've done such a great job this year. We should really be proud. 2 weeks later, the world stopped. And I was sitting there and I'm like, we just lost 60% of our customers, which were restaurants. And man. It was, it was surreal. I mean, being up here was surreal. My wife owns a wine shop, And, she's coming home every day and like, her clothes are being left outside and she's showering. My son is home. My aunt is home with my son. It was just, it was crazy. Louis couldn't come to do the blends. I had to do the blends here without him and send them to France. And then we Skyped and talked about the blends, and we've made big changes. Normally he's here, somebody's from St. Combs is here to help with filtrations. We had to do all of those by ourselves. It's been crazy. It's been crazy. And, it's not easy because as a small producer, we don't have the resources that large producers have. And what I know from the industry is the people, when they're nervous, they become very conservative. They're not trying new things anymore. So small producers who thrive in restaurants and thrive in smaller retail environments are at a big disadvantage because people are going to go with the big brands. And they're going to buy maybe their stuff at the grocery because they're there buying other products and they don't want to go out so much and they're being conservative. And this is what happened. So we have work to do, and we've had to change a lot of our thinking and how we're reaching out to customers, and it's made us rethink a lot of things because in this business, I mean, if you were strong in restaurants, that was the holy grail. And now, boom, overnight. So one of the things we did right from the beginning was, it's not a lot, but we started a little fund to contribute 5% of our sales to helping restaurants getting back on their feet. Is it millions of dollars? No, we're a very small winery, but, we hope it inspired maybe some other people to throw in a bit, and maybe with all of us throwing in a bit of extra money, we can help some restaurants get back up a little quicker. Which we all love good restaurants. So hopefully it turns around sooner than later. But it's been a challenging time because we don't know what's around the corner.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Well, I hope for hopefully a sooner rather than later return of our restaurant culture. It's difficult, but consumers certainly want it to be back and strong. So that's the positive point.
And people are spending time at home cooking, which is great. People are spending time with their families and cooking more, and so there's some nice things as well. But I do look forward to going to a great restaurant and having somebody else cook for me.
Definitely. Well, it's been such a pleasure to speak with you today. Anything that we didn't touch upon that we should know about Forge before we go?
Oh, I'm quite sure at the end, I'll think of 6 or 7 things, but I tried to give you, a sense of this region. I think that's important for people, that it's this emerging place. As somebody that's into wine, you'll never have this opportunity, I think, for most of us, to be in a place that has the capability of producing such world-class wines. But you can be here and watch it in front of your eyes. And most of the great places, whether it's Barolo or Burgundy or Bordeaux or all of the great places, Napa, they have a bit of history. Here, it's occurring in front of your eyes. And every year, I know at Forge, I learn 50 new things and different ideas about this area and how we can work and how we can do better. I think that's a pretty cool thing, that you can go to a region and literally it's not perfect, and you will taste wines that are like very weird sometimes, but then you'll find these things that you go, wow, like, holy, that's really outrageous. So I think if people are coming to visit, if they have this perspective, that it's a bit of it's like a little bit of a journey, and you're watching this place being born in front of you. I think it helps. It's the right perspective to have, and it can heighten the experience even more, because you're not going to have a chance to see that again from most regions.
Well, I can't wait until I can get up there and visit once again. Hopefully, visit you this time.
I hope.
But I appreciate you taking the time. Thank you so much.
No, absolutely. Thanks a bunch.
All
See ya.
right, talk soon. Bye.